I was a kid. I just did it.
Were you nervous about it?
A little bit. My triumph was, we were AOR, we were FM, we were underground. And, but I still had to make 5430. I had to hit the post for the news. And my major triumph was back timing Inagata Davida to hit the news. So I went dun, 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 and I hit it perfectly. I went, all right, I can do this.
Nothing felt as good as hitting the post.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi!
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
This is our very first podcast from a location other than Benztown in Glendale. We're actually in Cumulus's Nashville facility, beautiful facility. Special thanks right off the bat to Daniel Stewart, who is here running the board for us and recording everything. Thank you, Daniel, and really appreciate your hospitality to Charlie Cook and John Shomby and everyone inviting us in. We're going to do it a little bit different today as well. Usually, Carolyn, who is my guest, and sorry I should have started off with our guest, Carolyn Gilbert. Carolyn is the president, CEO, founder of NuVoodoo Media Services. So welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to Lisa Dollinger, who works with both of us, works with Benztown and NuVoodoo, and for putting all this together. It's really exciting to be speaking with you.
She's Wonder Woman.
She is Wonder Woman, that is for sure. We usually start off with having a drink as an icebreaker, but being that we're in Nashville and Daniel has already been so accommodating, I didn't want to have to send him down to the liquor store.
And it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, that's never stopped me before. I've drank earlier, but today we'll just have to stick with the Aquafina. But Carolyn, really, really thank you for taking the time. I know you're incredibly busy. I want to run through your career, but the first thing I want to ask you about, I'm going to jump right into it because we're in Nashville. One of the hot topics right now is that there is not enough female artists represented on country radio. And I saw this morning a survey that I think...
Mark Ramsey,
okay. 84% of the people polled said that there should be equal female to male airplay.
But they don't care.
They
don't. They want to hear the hits.
That's what
it's a ridiculous question. Mark knew what was ridiculous. I mean, it's a ridiculous question. People don't care. They want to hear what they like, and it's like the variety question. I want more variety. Well, what more variety means is I want you to play the music I like more. Variety has nothing to do with deep cuts or B-sides. Variety is more of the music I like. That's
interesting.
It. So that some of this is just misguided.
I see.
It's a question that was asked that is a nonsense question. People don't care. We spend a lot of time asking people about things that they don't think about or care about. No listener is sitting out there going, I wish I could hear more women singing on the radio. No, I wish I could hear more things I like on the radio.
Interesting. It makes sense.
It's not an issue that's come up in any other format. Play good music. That's it, period.
I know that you are very active with women's rights. You're incredibly powerful within our industry. You've been named, I think, several times to most powerful women in radio. Influential. Obviously ran Critical Mass Media, NuVoodoo, big executive with J-Corps, Tribune, and we're going to get into all that. Do you feel, and I'm actually kind of embarrassed to say this, I believe, is our 8th podcast, and you are honestly the first woman that I've interviewed. And thank you to Lisa again for putting that together. There was a study out a couple weeks ago that only, I want to say it was 11% of 12
of
PDs are women.
Yeah.
You think that's a problem?
Is it a problem? Well, I will say that the industry, it's changed over the years. I mean, I look back on my career and I look back at the times when I was the only woman at a conference table full of men deciding what women wanted to hear on the radio. I mean, it's been a male-driven industry. I think we haven't taught women to aspire for that position. There's some wonderful women in programming. Meg Stevens, is fabulous. Thea Mitchem over on the Hot AC side, or on the urban side. You've got Nikki Nite. You've got Leslie Whittle.
Yeah.
Down in Houston is one of the best PDs I've ever worked with.
Jennifer Seelig up in San Francisco.
Yeah, there are Haley Jones, who's no longer program director. These are passionate, wonderful women who love the business. And I think we haven't developed the bench the way we should, but I'm not sure how we're developing the bench overall for men or women.
That's a very good question. I do agree with you in that we need to do a better job of developing people young, and I think Dan Vallie and the radio talent system is doing a phenomenal job with that. But there definitely has to be more.
I mean, it's it has to do with interest, and women are excelling on the sales side.
Fascinating. We just were downstairs, and the name is going to escape me, but Daniel, your boss, the market manager here, is a female and running 5 radio stations here in Nashville.
Yeah,
and incredibly
some of the best
successful.
managers I've ever known are women.
Yeah. I wonder what that percentage would be, and I don't know if I've ever seen that before, the sales side of the business. If
it's much higher. Much, much, much higher.
Interesting.
And I've got my own theories on why women do better at sales than men, but...
You want to go into that, or if not, I'd love to hear about it.
No, I think women listen better.
Oh, I think that's 100% right.
And I hate to use generalities anywhere.
Yeah.
Because there are. I just hate generalities.
There's a women's intuition. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I had read that it's actually 100% factual because women see more of a room than a man does, and I'm going to not get these statistics 100% correct, but a man sees about 1% of what's going on around in a room. That's all we see. And a woman sees somewhere between 1.5% and 2%. So they're literally take in more information than what a man takes in.
There were presentations I used to go to back in the old J-Corps days, where my entire role in the presentation would be to read the room. Because I worked with one man especially who would talk and talk and talk, and I'd be the person to go, you're losing them. They're sleeping. Get to the point. I mean,
was this person Randy Michaels?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, he was not.
Yeah.
No.
How did you get inspired to go to Penn State, phenomenal school, and pursue a journalism degree?
Seriously. I went to a high school in Manhattan. It was a pretty prestigious high school. And I decided to go to a place where no one I knew was going. That was far enough away from home.
Right.
And so I ended up at Penn State. I wanted a big school. Broadcasting was, I didn't even realize what a big part of my life broadcasting was. But I remember being a little girl, my mother would listen to WOR. I mean, I knew I used to listen to Gene Shepard, at night falling asleep. I mean, and I didn't even realize how much I loved listening. And I went to Penn State in broadcast journalism and got a job, my first real radio job. I did continuity, which at the time was writing spots for the production director to record in State College, PA. They were $2.50 a piece.
Was this QWK?
WQWK, yeah. So I'd write spots from, I guess, after class, noon to about 6, and then I did 7 to 10 on the air.
How did that come about? You just saw it, you were in school, and you were interested in the radio station?
No, I started dating a disc jockey.
That's a great way to get introduced to the medium.
I mean, I started dating a disc jockey and ended up, it was 6 to 10, and ended up marrying a different disc jockey who did 10 to 2.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So they were friends.
Oh, yeah. But, but it was 1972. I mean, let's see, 1974 by the time, that happened.
Were your parents supportive of you doing radio?
My parents, I was a 21-year-old right out of school, and I said, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm moving 750 miles away with the disc jockey. See ya. And at that particular time, I thought it was fine. My mother has later told me that she totally freaked out, but she was very cool. And I think about my own kids now, And if my daughter did that to me, oh my God. But yeah, this is what I did to my poor parents.
What did your parents do?
What did they do about it?
No, for a living.
My mother was, talk about, back in the day, my mother was a brilliant woman who should have been an attorney and ended up being a legal secretary.
Okay.
And my father did pensions and stuff that makes my eyes glaze over.
So pretty well educated.
Yeah.
It seemed like they gave you a lot of confidence. I mean, it took a lot of guts to move 750 miles.
With a disc jockey.
With a disc, yeah. That was just insane. But the first part was guts.
Yeah. You know what? I think when you're young, I look back at some of the things I did. How did I do that?
So when you were going to do journalism at first, was it more to be a writer or television?
I learned how to do radio documentaries. I did them very well. Learned how to use a splicing block. I learned how to do an interview. I've always been a pretty good writer, so yeah, that's how it went.
You got the gig, and it just got under your skin.
Yeah.
And then from there, so you graduate. You work at. You were the first female jock, by the way, which is important to know.
Yes.
What was that like?
You know, I was a kid. I just did it.
Were you nervous about it?
A little bit. You know, my triumph was, we were AOR, we were FM, we were underground. And, but I still had to make 5430. I had to hit the post for the news. And my major triumph was back timing Inagata DeVita to hit the news. So I went dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 and I hit it perfectly. And I went, all right, I can do this.
Nothing felt as good as hitting the post. That was just so much. I really enjoyed doing that as well. Do you have any of your old air checks?
No.
Oh.
My ex-husband might, but, we don't need to hear him.
So the disc jockey you moved away 750 miles with. And then at that point, is that when you went to WWEZ?
That is exactly. Well, I went out for a job, and he was working at WEBN, the rock and roll station. And I just wanted a job. So I pounded the pavement a little bit and ended up getting that job, 11 on staff. It was a Schulke station, like working in an elevator. I mean, and we were in an apartment building, too, the first floor of an apartment building.
Way.
No, so it was like working in an elevator.
Oh, my gosh.
It's pretty funny.
And you did everything there. They had you
I didn't do traffic there.
That was the only thing you didn't do.
That was the only thing I didn't do. There was some woman there, Rose. I mean, it was pretty incredible. She sat in her office. She smoked cigarettes. And she scheduled 6 lousy spots an hour. And I did everything else. I dealt with corporate. Man. I answered the phones. I had to deal with the sales guys, and you know how much fun that is. I mean, I did AR. I did AP. I did all the monthly reports. I worked for the GM. I mean, what did I know? I was 21 years old.
But what a foundation. I mean, in hindsight, to understand every aspect of the business, which I think sometimes is a mistake with new people that are coming in. They get focused on, I want to be on air, or they want a program or whatever it is, and they don't learn about the rest of the business.
Yeah, and so I learned a lot back then.
I think being as versatile as possible is incredibly important.
Yeah,
How long were you there?
Oh, I was only there about 18 months because I really wanted to work at EBN.
Which you got to do.
I did get to do that.
How did that come to be?
Well, every day we only had one car, and I got the car because we're walking distance from UVN. So I'd bring the car back to pick up my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, and I'd stop in at Frank Wood's office, Bo, who was the manager and owner and just an incredible, incredible man. And I'd say, you really need to hire me. And I'd walk out. And I did that every day for like a year.
No, that's incredible. I love stories of persistence. That's amazing.
And at that time, Robin Wood was doing traffic at WEBN. If you're in Cincinnati, Robin Wood went on the air.
Okay.
And that was in 1975. And Bo said, "You're hired." I think I made $90 a week. I mean, it was ridiculous.
What was the feeling of finally getting hired after a year?
Well, it was bliss. I mean, I was really happy. And, the woman who worked across our desks faced each other. Jackie Brum was which was Jackie Spire at the time. She was a sales secretary. And I did traffic and continuity because that was one job there. And she's still my friend. Oh, Jackie awesome. Went from request lady to sales secretary and ended up being the manager. And probably one of the finest managers we've ever had. And she went into sales. I mean, Jackie, talk about knowing what you're doing. Jackie's amazing.
Did you learn a lot from her?
Yes. Yeah. We learn from each other. She's still one of my best friends in the world.
That's fantastic. Is she still in the business?
No. No, she retired a number of years ago.
How long were you at EBN?
Well, we had gotten married.
Okay.
Yeah, I got pregnant.
With, I know you've got Jay, and you've got Lisa and Russ. So with Lisa,
Russ. So I worked there. Russ was born September 28th, 1976. So I worked at EBN until September 27th, 1976. And so, yeah, that was...
And then you left to raise Russ?
Well, both of them, yes. And my labor was live on the air for a whole day.
No way.
And there is tape of that, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No. The nurses, I remember I'm sitting there, and I don't want to deal with this. All the nurses went, "That's you."
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
How did they talk you into doing that?
I didn't do anything. I mean, there was just like a blow-by-blow report. They would talk about me, word from Christ Hospital, blah, 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 because Jay was on the air at the time, and I had been doing traffic and continuity. And then, and so... my son was actually born at 10:42 that night, and it happened to be the 10-2 jock's birthday, too, Brian O'Donnell.
No way.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard people that are dedicated to the industry. I remember I got my navel pierced live on air, and I remember Jagger and Christy telling me that's when
Now,
the
birth was not on air, but labor was.
But the labor, I mean, that's incredibly painful and stressful.
It was just play-by-play. I mean, there was no mic in the room.
Amazing, though.
Well, and of course, my ex-husband, after my son was born, he had no place to go, so he went to the radio station.
Oh, my God.
And my son actually was born with jaundice. He had severe jaundice, ended up at Children's Hospital till he was 9 days old. And so I was driving by the time I picked my son up from the hospital. My son was in a radio station before he was in his own home.
That's amazing. So you and your ex, I mean, you guys lived, breathed, slept radio.
Yeah. To the point.
Important.
Yeah.
And Russ has done an amazing job. He's in the business as well. He's got a production company.
Well, no, he's actually got it's a digital company that actually is part of my company now.
Got it. Fantastic. But I remember I've seen him at some events before and doing some video production and so forth.
He worked at J-Corps. He was J-Corps' first webmaster in 1996.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So he's been from the early days of hardly anyone had websites or anything at that point.
Nobody had websites. Yeah.
So when was your daughter born?
2 years later.
Okay. And you're working this entire time?
No.
Okay.
No. I left in 1976. I left. And I was at home with the kids.
Was that tough?
I was a kid myself. Periodically, I think, good thing they learned to open the refrigerator. They would have starved to death. I mean, I was a child when I had those children. I'm going, my God, I was out of my mind. I had a mortgage at 22.
Oh, my gosh.
Who does that? So I remember the day I decided to go back to work vividly. It was 5:15 in the afternoon. I was in the family room. I had my head in my hands, sort of, bracing my head up, and I was watching Mr. Rogers. And I looked around the room and noticed there were no children in the room.
Where had they gone?
Well, I don't know, but I'm watching Mr. Rogers. And so Jay got home from work. I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going back to work on Monday. My brain is officially jello. So that's what I did. That night, we went to a party, and Frank Wood was there, Bo. And I said, I don't care what you have. I'm ready to go back to work. Let me know. And 2 weeks later, he called me for lunch and said, hey, I want to start this research thing with Steve Casey. You interested?
That's how your career in research started.
Yeah.
By the way, it was an amazing gift you gave your kids to be an at-home mother, which is a tremendous amount of work. And my mother did the same thing for me, and I hope they're grateful because it's
Well, it was, I was... people figure out a way to make things work, but I was very, very lucky. The way my career evolved, I went back to work, but I'd drop them off at school in the morning and pick them up at 3 o'clock until they were 10 and 12. They didn't know I worked. Yeah. So that I was there. I'm just very, very Very, very lucky.
Yeah. And also a very hard worker, incredibly dedicated to your family and your career.
I like them.
Very
Most days I like them.
So let's talk about research and launching this company.
Oh, God. It was, once again, I think doors open for people all the time, and we choose to walk through some of them, and we choose to ignore some of them. I ran this little company for Bo. It was my company by design.
So Bo comes, that's where I wanted to kind of dive into. So Bo comes to you and wants to launch this.
Yeah.
And at this point, obviously you've been now in broadcasting and know just about every aspect of it. Was research something that fascinated you?
No. No. I learned to love it. But no, Steve Casey and John Sebastian had launched this little program where you had girls on the telephone going through the phone books, collecting listening information and then playing hooks on a cart machine and putting hash marks down in the opinions. And we started with 4 cart machines, 4 girls. It was a railroad flat about 1.5 miles from the radio station. And my ex-husband at the time had a production company.
Okay.
We had it in the same place. And he rented studio space at the time. And so I ran both companies. Because, research was little. And then Bo bought QMF. And then we had a consultant. And we decided, how do we grow J. Gilbert Productions? That was my ex-husband's business. He said, I don't know how to do that, but this research thing really fascinates me. And he was an ex-P&G guy.
Okay.
So Neil Smith and I went into partnership, and I learned how to do research from the P&G perspective.
Incredible. As in Procter & Gamble?
As in Procter & Gamble.
Oh, my gosh. So you couldn't learn from
We worked for P&G. We worked for Drackett. We worked for a lot of big companies.
So when the company first started, stations were hiring you to do... No?
When the company first started, EBN was my only radio client.
Oh, you did this, spun it up just for EBN.
Yeah, just for EBN. Bo didn't want research girls at night at the radio station with disc jockeys. I don't know why. I mean, seriously.
They'd be moving 750 miles away with them. Now, was this really ahead of its time?
It was about the time. I mean, Steve Casey built this little program that worked on a Trash 80. My first computer was a TRS 80.
Oh, my God. That was the the Tandy, right?
Yeah. It's a radio shack.
Yeah.
They call it a Trash 80.
I remember my dad bringing one of those home when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it had a cassette as your backup. It didn't even have a floppy drive.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I went to partnership with this other guy, we had a Zenith with a research program in it. I mean, that was like way back, And so I learned how to do research.
And then you became passionate about it. Were the results that you were getting for EBN starting to really show up in the ratings?
Yeah. I mean, it was old style call out. And then I owned this company.
So they sell it to you?
No, it was always mine.
Oh, it was always yours. Oh.
Yeah.
So they came to you with the idea, said, hey, you should do this.
Yeah, and I got my, Bo just covered the basic expenses.
I see.
I grew it, and then into the other things, and then J-Corps happened.
And that I'm really excited to dive into, because I don't think there's a more famous broadcast company than J-Corps. And just
it was fun.
The stories that have emanated out of that company.
About half of them are true, and half of them are worse.
So what's the name of the company? It's not Critical Mass yet, is it?
No, it was Tri-State Radio Research.
Tri-State Radio Research.
And Grill. You can cheapen anything by putting the words "and grill" after.
So how did you start to pick up clients outside of EBN? How did that come to be?
J-Corps.
So J-Corps is your first client outside of EBN?
Yeah. Well, J-Corps.
That's amazing.
J-Corps bought that company from me, and I went to work for them.
Unreal. So you had to have been doing something very special for them to recognize that, because I'm sure there was other research companies they could have purchased, correct?
Well, except I was working with EBN, and that was when I spent my career, shredding research to keep Randy Michaels from dumpster diving into Gannett. I mean, EBN had a stool in the record library that said Randy Michaels on it, so you stepped on it every time. So Bo called me one day, it was 1985, and said, yeah, I want you to have lunch with Randy Michaels and give him the research. And I'm, what?
Right, I just come out of...
I mean, are you out of your mind? And so I had lunch with Randy Michaels. And, I have this envelope with the research in it, and he goes to take it, and I pull it back because I can't do this.
At that point, if I'm sitting across the table, you still have to be incredibly young. You're sitting across the table for Randy Michaels, and he's already an icon at that point, right?
Well, he was just the enemy. I didn't know who he was. I mean, yeah, he did Q1. Okay, he's this little guy with a big mouth. Right. So,
you've got some real chutzpah. I mean, you do. So you're sitting across from your biggest competitor, who is, at least at that point, a brilliant programmer.
Of course, he's
and
brilliant. Yeah,
that's been recognized. And you're now presenting this research.
I just gave it to him in an envelope, and so we have lunch, and we were only doing call out at the time, and so he plays me this tape of Kurt Hanson doing an auditorium music test. And he said, "Can you do that?"
Kurt Hanson is from Kurt Hanson?
Yeah, he used to be, he was strategic radio research.
Oh, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So he plays me this tape of this guy in front of a room talking. Can you do that? I went, oh, yeah, of course I can do that. I had no idea what I was talking about.
And, I mean, that takes a tremendous amount of skill.
So we ended up with...
And I just want to kind of clarify for a few people that may not completely understand that are listening. So at this point, you're doing traditional call out you have the women in the room, they're calling listeners on the phone, playing hooks of songs.
Yeah, pulling out pages of the phone book and crossing off every fifth number. I mean, you're dialing the phone.
Yeah, which is hard work, and certainly a lot goes into it. But now doing an auditorium music test, you're leading an entire panel.
You got to recruit the panel, you got to pay the panel. I had no idea what I was talking about.
And so Randy had gotten audio of Kurt
and
doing
said, can
this.
you do this? Yeah.
And you're like, heck yeah, I can.
Yeah, heck yeah, I can. We did 600 hooks. My first test was in Nashville, Tennessee, because J-Corps happened.
I'm like, so Randy, this is such a crazy story. So Randy comes to you, he asks you this, or I'm just getting my arms completely wrapped around it. You've never done it before, and now he hires you to do one of his stations.
Yeah.
You've got to be just beside yourself at this point.
I was too stupid. So this was J-Corps. They bought my company. I reported to Randy.
Holy shit. So he bought your company.
Yeah, not for much. But
okay, but still.
So I worked for Randy.
You sold him at that lunch. He buys your company.
Well, they do. I mean, that deal was just going to happen anyway.
Okay.
Because we were so closely affiliated.
I see.
And, it was just a paper deal more than anything else. And then I went to work for Randy.
And then they send you here to do your first AMT.
It was Nashville for Y107.
And what was that like during your first year? Like, okay, here I am. My company's been sold, and now are you heading research at that point for J-Corps?
Well, kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. My first music test, the first thing I moderated. All right, we recruited the test, and the people show up, which was amazing. And so I'm starting to do the opening monologue, and four guys, Mike Kenny, Frank Wood, Tony Galuzzo, and Marc Chase. I met Marc Chase then. They walk in like the freaking mafia. They go to the four corners of the room. Randy later told me, he said, I thought you were a little nervous.
You think?
So Randy goes to the back of the room and does what he does so well to loosen me up and made me crack up.
Oh, he is hilarious. So,
yeah. And,
Did they know? Did the audience know, the panel know that they worked for the company?
No. We've never.
Okay, got it.
No.
So they just came as observers.
Yeah, they just came to observe, and I pulled it off.
Unbelievable.
Now, back in the day, I was using a Mac then.
Okay.
It was a 512, and I could get the music run one page at a time. One song at a time, you do it. So 600 songs. And then you could print it out in test order, but only one page at a time. I had 3 printers going. My children would come out for after school, and I'd send them around in the circle around the building to press enter after each. I'm not kidding. And then you have to sit there on the floor and sort it to get to an alphabetical book together.
Oh, my gosh. Has technology changed?
Oh, yeah.
What a process. Just putting all that together.
Yeah. So, yeah, we did it. And at that time, we had Cincinnati, what we called the Vols, Nashville, Knoxville, and Jacksonville. The Vols.
The Vols.
We had Atlanta and Cleveland, and then bought Denver, and that was J-Corps for a while. Until consolidation,
And so you're working with Randy, Marc, legends in the business.
And by the
traveling.
way, Y107 is still my all-time favorite radio station ever.
Is it really?
It was a dump. But, you walked into that building, and there was an energy there that just made you laugh.
Something about that when you step into stations, and you and I have been privileged to be in so many of them, but you can generally feel stations that are winning. It doesn't really matter how it looks. It's just the vibe that emanates from the building.
Exactly.
And, it's interesting how you say that, but I've had long conversations with Michael Martin about that, and he's always felt the same way.
They're just magical stations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Randy certainly had his fingers in a lot of them. It was something and as did you. So at this point, J-Corps got, 20, 25 stations, something like that?
Yeah, we got Tampa. And Tampa, the Power Pig is a story and a half.
Oh, my God. Tell us, I'd love to hear a Power Pig story.
Okay, Power Pig story. So, did the research for Power Pig. And RBQ was a monolith. RBQ couldn't be beat, They owned every single image, weather, traffic, personality, music, everything. And they were, they were officially a CHR, but, they played across the board. They owned 2554. So the thought behind the Power Pig is come in with 90 songs, go in from the bottom, grab the teens, and become the young end. It was the only play. And so we figured they'd move into the money demos, become hot AC. They owned everything. And they matched us song for song. And we were just sort of befuddled going, wow.
That's wild. What do you think they were thinking?
It was jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
It was jaw-dropping. But,
what's it like to be, and I'm fortunate in that I'm involved, obviously, from the imaging production side with launches, but I'm generally not an architect. Obviously in LA when I launched my FM, but I'm not on a regular basis the architect of a new launch. What is that whole preparation process like?
Oh, my God, so much of it was in Randy's brain. I'll tell you a story about the NAB in 1989, okay? It was in New Orleans, and I was in New Orleans with Randy, and Power Pig was about to launch. So it was the last day of the NAB. Randy was going to leave the next day, and he said, "Come for a ride with me. I just got to think." So we drove to Mississippi, but I was a piece of furniture because he talked to the steering wheel the whole way and plotted out the launch. There was a ransom thing that went on. There was it was a complex and wonderful sort of scam to launch the station. And he talks the whole thing out, and we get back. It's after dinner, and I saw lots of Mississippi. I'd never been to Mississippi. There was bayous, and I think I had a po' boy for the first time, because when you travel with Randy, it's all about the food.
It's part of the creative process.
But as I said, I could have been the steering wheel. So we get back to the hotel. He said, "Oh, God, should I go to Tampa tonight?" That's when you could fly anywhere, anytime. I said, "Should I go to Tampa tonight or should I go tomorrow?" I went, "Give me the car. I'm taking you to the airport. Get out of here." And he flew to the airport that night, and I returned the car the next day and went home. But, yeah,
so
it was...
You guys just, you really hit it off. He obviously valued your insight, your intelligence, and then your creative mind as well.
Randy's a piece where I think I pretty much just put up with it.
So consolidation happens in 96.
I remember that weekend well.
What happened? It gets signed in. Clinton signs it in?
Well, yeah. It was the second weekend in February of 1996. And Friday, J-Corps was the first to do a deal, and it was the Noble deal. And at that time, nobody could do PowerPoint. Nobody could do. I did, and you needed somebody you could trust to do the banker shows, and when they're doing a road show, it's confidential information. It's a lot of. So yeah, he did trust me. So I did. I did all the banker shows. So
you were on the financial road show.
I didn't go on the road show. I did. I just I did their presentations
together.
Yeah.
That's a huge responsibility.
I worked with them. They're fine. It was fine. I also did inside radio. I knew how to use a computer. So
still, I mean, you're going out and meeting with big banks and putting together funding.
I didn't do that. They did that. They went on the road show. I just, I did the.
But they presented your deck.
Yeah, they did. It wasn't even called a deck back then. It was a bunch of slides. As a matter of fact, it was a bunch of slides. You printed them out.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Like presented as a packet.
Yeah, or, on transparencies. I mean.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
And so Randy saw this coming. And
so anyway, that Friday we did the Noble deal.
So he was armed. He had his ammunition.
Yeah, so they did the Noble deal, and he said, Sunday, I'm going to come over to your house. I need to do the deck. We have to do the road show next week. Now this deal is done. We got to put together the road show. I said, fine. It was Sunday. It was a Sunday afternoon. I needed to go to the store. I'm doing laundry. I have a life. And so he calls me. He's supposed to be there at 1 o'clock. He said, I'm not going to make it at 1. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I will call you. So 2:30 he calls again. I can't make it yet. And I'm going, I got to go to the store. What? And I couldn't leave because he was going to. So he shows up at 10 o'clock that night. I mean, my kids are asleep, And he looks at me and goes, we just did City Casters. He had been with Carl Lindner that whole day. So we announced the first and second deal, but we had to redo everything. So
he did those two deals in like a few days?
3 days, yeah.
Holy moly.
And so Monday morning I went out and got a cell phone. My first cell phone.
Was it one of those brick cell phones?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that's
It might have been a bag phone.
Oh, I remember the bag phones, too. I used to do call-ins from the bag phone.
And I saw my first bill, and it was jaw-dropping.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, it was like $1 something a minute or whatever.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I said if I'd had a cell phone, I could have gone to the store.
So overnight, you guys, what, are you triple in size, quadruple in size?
Yeah, we got Noble and City Casters, yeah.
That's unreal. So how does your job now change?
I got a whole lot of radio stations to take care of. Yeah.
Do you have a pretty good-sized team at this point?
We have a pretty good-sized team, but we moved after that.
Where were you?
Well, we had been in Hyde Park.
Okay.
We're over a restaurant, actually, sort of like a small kind of mall.
Gotcha.
All right. And I had J. Gilbert Productions and what became Critical Mass Media, which was Frank's name. He loved great names. Bo made that up. 2 jokes, 1 name. So we moved from Hyde Park to Airport Road, and we also got our first predictive dialer at that point.
Wow. What's a predictive dialer?
A predictive dialer is what you hear now that makes really annoying phone calls.
Oh, so like the auto dial.
Yes, but we had real operators. But if you ever noticed, when you're being called predictively, there's a pause before somebody says.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So they'll call you. I'm getting them now with obviously in California, Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then if they sense that you pick it up, then a live person.
Exactly.
And that must have changed your scope.
It changed everything.
Certainly for the call out.
It changed everything, yeah.
Just sped the whole process
Well,
up
yeah, because we were able to load numbers and you didn't have to rip things out of a phone book anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So your world is just changing incredibly.
Yeah.
Are you divorced at this point?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the business is split up, which was a good thing. And yeah.
Do you feel working together, and you can always tell me just to shut up and we will, and I'll cut this out, but do you think that working together hurt your relationship?
No.
No? Okay.
No. My ex-husband is a wonderful, wonderful man. I love him dearly. I just shouldn't be married to him. Yeah.
Understand. I have an ex-wife, very, very similar.
My daughter said it, she said, when I was little, I couldn't quite understand why you and Dad didn't stay together. But now that I'm older, I understand that you run at 78 and Dad runs at 33 to third.
That's a great, and I've never heard that before. That's
and
hilarious.
You know what? I mean, my ex-husband is terrific. Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys
he's
are close.
He's a wonderful father. We always had joint custody. We do every holiday together.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, because we have 2 kids. And
that's great. Is he still in the radio business?
He is.
Oh, no kidding.
He works for Cumulus.
Are you serious?
I am.
Where?
Cincinnati.
What's his name?
Jay Gilbert.
Oh, my gosh. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
What a small world.
And he's wonderful on the air. He's the best writer I know, by far. He's an incredible writer. He's a wonderful talent. And
oh, that's a neat story. I'm really happy to hear that it
he's
turned
wonderful.
out so well.
And his second wife is marvelous. Mary is delightful, and I love her. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And everyone gets along.
And she puts up with our holidays together and everything. She's wonderful. Yeah.
So now you're traveling. You've tripled in size, quadrupled in size.
Yeah.
You're traveling
to
much
do
more.
AMTs.
Are you conducting all these yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Holy moly.
At the time.
So you must have been on the road practically every week.
First and third quarter, I was sometimes as we grew, because, we got Tampa and Denver and San Diego, and because we absorbed nationwide, and Gannett.
Jeez.
And eventually other people started doing it, but I used to travel with box cutters. Because all the materials would be shipped, I had to open them.
Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable. So you guys are ahead. There's no doubt you were ahead of the curve as a company. What's that feeling like? I mean, there's got to be just
you don't
excitement.
appreciate what you have. It was a lot of fun. When Pam Taylor came to the company, may she rest in peace, one of the dearest, most wonderful people I've ever known. When Pam came to the company to corporate to do, PR communications, I said, Pam, you're going to have to be Tink because the role of Wendy is already taken. It was like being with the Lost Boys. Oh. The NABs where Randy ripped his shirt off of a waitress, okay? Those shirts don't just come off.
Oh, my gosh.
I traveled with the seam ripper. I had every third stitch. These are the things you did, and I look back and go, a lot of that wouldn't fly today, but it was a different time.
I had interviewed Ken Charles,
Yeah.
And his podcast is going to start actually just right before yours, and I was telling him I was coming to see you here, and he told me a story that you were in the interview. It was him, Randy, and yourself, and you were at a very nice steak restaurant that overlooked the river that I guess Randy loved to go to.
It was the waterfront.
The waterfront.
Which unmoored and flowed down the river at a later date. Yeah.
Oh, my God. That's all I'm going to have to hear that at some point. And Randy had a fart machine. Ken came, all ready to be interviewed. I think he was interviewing for Atlanta at that point.
Yes.
Big radio station and very nervous as you could imagine. And Randy stuck this little fart machine next to an older couple that was having dinner and that thought it was very funny to launch the fart machine sounds and then see what the older couple is. There was actually two sets of older couples. And they're kind of staring at each other and then they would just ignore it. And then Randy would do it again and they would just ignore it. And Randy thought this was the funniest thing. And that stuck out as it would to me. That was Ken's interview. And he got the gig.
Yeah. There are many things I've experienced over the year. I remember being in a very nice restaurant in Washington, D.C., and I don't know that they ever got the butter out of the sconces on the wall.
Did he have a knack? I mean, talking about you would go and were known for reading a room. Did he just have a knack? The talent that he worked with and the talent that he found, including yourself, I mean, really is still to this day, so many of them are powerhouses in our industry.
Randy was a great leader. He was not a crazy man. He's one of the smartest people I've ever known. He reads voraciously. When he took over at Tribune, he read every book about Colonel McCormick and the industry. I mean, he does his homework. And he said, I'm not that smart. I just know anything that has to do with radio. Meaning physics, topography, geology. He's done every job. He started as an engineer.
And I'd heard those stories that he would show up at radio stations and want to tweak with the processing.
Oh, it's the first thing he wanted to do. He used to sit there with ComStudy, and probably still does. He changed signal maps. He fit stations in where they weren't supposed to fit by just, doing the dominoes.
Amazing.
And, he loved radio, still loves radio more than anything.
J-Corps eventually sells to Clear Channel.
Yeah, that was a sad weekend, yeah.
Randy became a multi-millionaire many times over. Did you do well in that?
I worked for a living.
So
Others
it wasn't,
did better.
Others did. Okay. So you were sad.
Yeah, I was there the day that. I was there the day that became inevitable. It was at another NAB. Yeah.
And you stayed though with the company for several years after that.
Well, Randy was there until 2002, and I stayed till 2008.
Yeah, I remember us working together when I was at K-Big. You would come in, and Leigh would come in, and I'm excited to get to that because it's awesome that you and Leigh are partnered back together.
Well, we were partnered at Tribune too.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm excited to talk about Tribune. But so you stay. Randy leaves in 2002. How are things different, or how are things even the same? Maybe a better question.
They were different. It was different. I can't. I just probably don't even want to go into that because it's past.
Yeah, I understand. I think, for me, I lived through that period, and
there's an energy that was lost.
It was a soul. I agree.
There's something in Proverbs that says, "Without vision, a people perishes." The vision was gone from the company. If you want to know the God's honest truth.
Yeah.
Now, things have changed radically since then, and I respect the hell out of iHeart. I think they're leading the industry in so many ways.
I agree. I find Bob Pittman, much like Randy, he can command a room. I got to see him speak at the podcast movement last week. He is a leader. He's someone that you see that he talks in great sound bites on CNBC. Yeah. He does a really good job with that, and I do think that they're doing a good job.
They're the leader, and I think every company has missteps.
Yeah,
but they've got wonderful people, wonderful resources. So
did Randy just for him? Obviously, he's passionate. I think he's someone like you, myself, that just loves it. But he just saw that was the time. That was a great exit for him.
It didn't quite happen that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's public record. He became the head of, I think it was called New Technology.
Okay.
He gave him the phone without the battery.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. It was just the
Maze
cultures.
culture and Randy's. Yeah. It was different, and Randy was just a magnet for people. He led passionately, and he was so smart. You just wanted to follow him.
Roy Laughlin, who hired me in
Roy is
LA,
such a piece of work.
He is, and he was part of that school,
yes.
and certainly had a tremendous amount of success during that era.
Roy's one of the best salespeople ever.
He's
ever.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
He's a stitch. I love Roy.
He said that a lot of the things that are happening today, Randy predicted 20 some odd years ago.
Yeah, and I think, Randy had a vision for voice tracking, which was not take one guy and make him do 10 shifts. It was find the best talent and share it. It was his hub and spoke concept, his voice tracking concept. It's not what's being done now, and I think it's kind of sad to see. I mean, nobody loves talent the way Randy loves talent. And he managed talent, and I remember him telling me a story about Gary Burbank. Randy was program director of WOW. Gary threw a fit and started throwing carts around, ripped the phone out of the wall, and, stood on Randy's desk and threw a fit. And Randy said, "You done now?" He went, "Yeah, go back to work." But you think about it. Weekender comes in and does the same thing. Yeah. You're out of here.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between this great talent, Gary Burbank, and the Weekender? It's called asshole factor.
In many ways, our job is different, much like a coach of a football team or a basketball team. You're coaching and you're working with talent that a lot of times are making a lot more money than you are, that are obviously incredibly creative, and you've got to manage them differently than you would in a traditional business where the boss's word is the final
absolutely
word.
Absolutely. I mean, even to this day, I don't have air talent, but I work with some brilliant and talented people. You have to manage talent.
Yeah. And that's a tough, and I would agree with you that he had that knack.
He did have that knack.
Always working with you for the few years that I did, I thought that you got, and probably, Randy saw that in you, I think sometimes research gets put into this analytical bucket, and it sometimes isn't viewed as creative as it can be. And
right.
You've always had this this programming side to you, which I think is a
I
neat
love PDs.
Yeah.
I love PDs. I mean, I used to get to talk to PDs every single day, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
And I think that sometimes it was tough because sometimes you've got to deliver news that isn't good news.
Right, exactly.
How would you deal with that? What was like a trick that you had?
Just tell the truth. Sometimes PDs would want sample that didn't exist. I know everybody who worked with me at Critical Mass knew that I would say, I can't find people who don't exist in a percentage they don't exist in. I mean, Arbitron found 30%. Yeah, it's 6. It was 6 people in your market. You want me to find 30 of them a week? What is the matter with you?
So in 2008, you left?
Yeah, I left.
2008, you leave.
Yes.
At that point, I mean, you were overseeing 800, 900 stations, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
What a tremendous,
we had 700 people at Critical Mass.
Oh, you had a team of 700 people.
Yeah, we had 2 facilities, 2 call centers, 700 people, including all the part-timers, yeah.
Oh, just the management. I mean, that's an incredible management position just in and of itself. Plus trying to lead.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, leaving then was sort of a blessing because most of them had to be fired and I didn't have to do it.
Oh, man. Because of downsizing?
Well, no, because of technology.
Oh.
I do an awful lot of work right now with 17 people.
And I'm excited to hear about, I want you to tell me how things have changed.
Yeah.
Let's get into, so you leave, and then you go straight into Tribune?
Yep.
Back with your pal, Randy.
Well, I worked for Marc Chase.
And Marc.
Marc was head of TI, Tribune Interactive. And there were a bunch of us who went up to Chicago. I actually commuted every week. I commuted from Cincinnati to Chicago every week.
How long of a flight is that?
I didn't fly, I drove.
You drove, okay,
Yeah.
so it's pretty...
It was 4 hours. And whenever I flew, it was 7. So O'Hare,
I know how that goes.
Yeah, and there were actually 8 traffic lights between my house in Cincinnati and the apartment I lived in Chicago, and I lived right behind Tribune Tower, so I could see my office window from my apartment. So I had 0 commute all week.
Jeez,
my commute was actually less than most of the people I worked with.
How does this all come to be? How do you end up at Tribune?
Well, Randy gets the job at Tribune for Sam Zell. And wants people around him who he knows. So Marc left, and Steve Gable became head of technology, and Jerry Kirsting.
Sean Compton,
who is still at Tribune.
Yeah, I saw that. That's amazing.
Yeah, Sean's he started as a kid, and I'm very proud of Sean. Me. I mean, Jeff Kapugi was there, Mike O'Connor was there, Russ was there. I brought Leigh Jacobs and Erin Gabbard there, and PJ Kling, who works with me now, and oh my goodness, Erica Thornton, who did finance for the Clear Channel Cluster in Chicago, and
so he's putting the whole team back together.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And is there this feeling of excitement again?
Oh, John Phillips, who was the most qualified for his job, he flew John can fix anything. John was in charge of the building,
the facility itself.
Yeah, the building is amazing,
incredible. We're talking the famous Tribune building,
yes,
literally.
Yeah. Oh, that building is amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know that building sits on 2 25,000-gallon tanks of oil?
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, in case the power went out.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So they have fuel literally to...
Yeah, I don't know whether it's still there, but it was there when we were there.
That would make sense. I mean, to keep the operation
you
going.
sit on a bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, probably wouldn't pass code today.
Yeah, well, anyway, but so we were all there. It was fabulous. Kevin Matheny, may he rest in peace, was there too. He went to WGN.
Yeah. How many stations do you guys have now at that time? I know, do you have WGN?
That was the only radio.
That was the only radio. I thought, didn't you buy a few others at that point?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No, that was radio.
You're full on now in print.
No, TV.
TV. You're not on the print side of it.
I worked actually. I was executive vice president of research and inside sales.
Inside sales. What does that mean?
Randy said, there's a call center over on Canal Street. I don't know what they do. It's yours. Go figure out what they do. I mean, and it turns out they did telesales for Career Builder, which was owned partly by
Tribune.
So I go over to this call center, and there are a bunch of people sitting there making phone calls. I don't know anything. I mean, essentially, what he said was similar to saying, you used to build houses. They have windows. Go over there, build cars. They have windows, too. I had no idea what I was doing. But I went over there, and it was, when we got there, there's so many different divisions. The revenue was in one division, and the expense was in another division. And, I mean, it was... it took like 4 months to get financials to find out how we were doing.
Sure.
It was really a big company.
100-year-plus company.
Yeah. So I went, okay, sales. Who do I know who knows sales? I got to figure out what these people are doing and how they're doing it and what I need to do with it. So John Martin lives in Chicago. He worked with me at Critical Mass. I had him come in and do an analysis of that sales team and what they were doing. I read the report. I said, that's a good idea, and I managed it, and we cut it back, and eventually we got it in the black. So I had that to deal with, and I also had research for the whole company, which was fabulous, because I had no staff for research except for Leigh.
Uh-huh.
And I just saw what they were doing. So I got to observe. I got to work with a lot of big companies that the business units were using. I mean, the Maggots and the Hects and, all these companies. I got to learn how to do online research properly. Read a lot of academic papers. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Taking a radio station database and sending emails out is not the way to do it. It's not research. It's polling. It's like filling up Paul Brown Stadium with people on Sunday in fall and saying, how many people here like football? Oh, 94% of everybody loves football.
That's a phenomenal way of putting it.
Yeah. So much radio research, quote unquote, is done that way.
Loading the results.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
So there is a pattern. This is
me not knowing what I'm talking about.
But you go in and you do it, which is incredible. I mean, that is. Again, back to the guts, certainly the intelligence, but to go and do those things, whether it was moving 750 miles away from your parents, showing up in Nashville to do your first AMT, and then showing up at Tribune and taking over inside sales and research.
I wouldn't try and fake brain surgery. But this wasn't brain surgery.
How long were you at Tribune?
It was 3 years, 2 3/4 years, and I call us the bath water. The email dries up, and Randy's gone, and 2 weeks after that, we're all laughing. I mean, we're at lunch, and you just know it's coming.
There is a documentary out right now called Industrial Magic, and it was based upon a company, this is in the early 90s, that was funded by Phillips, Sony, Apple, and they were way ahead of their time in basically developing a smartphone.
Yeah.
And they, believe it or not, that team, it ended up failing. They were incredibly bright. One of them went on to start eBay. One went on to design the Android. Tony Fandel went on to design, was one of Steve Jobs' right-hand man in the iPhone, and then went on to do the Nest thermostat, which he sold to Google.
Right.
But almost everyone on this team, I think there's about a dozen of them, went on to do these amazing things, and we use their products pretty much every day. But at that particular moment in time, a team of brilliant people, it just wasn't the right time for them to come together. Mm-hmm. And they were ahead of their time. Is that what you think happened?
Oh, God. So many things happen. I mean, I remember sitting in a meeting, newspaper. Oh, my God. They were the rich kids. I remember they had a whole floor at Tribune where there were marketing people. And essentially what they did was make PowerPoints to show to each other at the next meeting. Jeez. I mean, we got a marketing director who's really the van driver in radio. I mean, these were the rich kids. Sales to them was reading what came off the fax machine. Yeah. And you found out that what killed newspaper was Craigslist.
Oh, wow. I
The
had
money,
never thought about that.
the money was all in classifieds.
Oh, geez. And so there.
And so it's not circulation. It wasn't, it wasn't subscriptions. It wasn't display. The money was in that Sunday paper that was packed with classifieds. And that's gone. But the salespeople there couldn't get it. And editorial has gone, well, it's a sales problem. Why should we suffer? Why do we have to lose our jobs? Well, it's math. Money doesn't come from the money machine. And so there was a very concerted effort. This new guy was coming in. Randy was cash flow positive there.
I believe that.
Because, he reads a balance sheet really well. He understands math. And it was a concerted effort. I mean, it was a bunch of stuff that happened. It was a front page article in the New York Times where I know the truth. What they printed, what they printed was not the truth. I mean, and frankly, if they'd done some digging, they could have found other stuff, but they did no digging.
Wow.
And so, it was bad. And it hurt a lot of people, and it destroyed a few lives. I mean, big deal. There was a poker game up in the colonel's office. Do you know what else went on? I mean, there was also a hidden liquor cabinet. It was this gated thing from Prohibition. There was back stairways, so the colonel could escape from the mafia. I mean, it was great. I was at that poker game. There were no strippers at the poker game, and Betsy Phillips won the poker game. I mean, it was fun. And what they did to that was, it wasn't right. It just wasn't right, but it was what it was. Yeah. And I will tell you, Tribune Company was very nice to me when I left. And it gave me enough runway to start a new company. So I have no regrets. There's some great people at Tribune Company. Sean Compton is still at Tribune. Bless his heart. He's great.
He's become a bigwig there. He's television, right?
He's a big deal, and he's done an amazing job. Yeah. I got to give Sean all the credit in the world. Yeah. He played it better than any of us.
I would say, and again, back to the pattern of you being the guts and all the things I've already said, but you look at our business and you look at how print has struggled, you look at how cable is struggling more, and obviously we've got our issues in radio. But I wonder if part of what makes us resilient is because we're so damn scrappy. And I say that in a good way, but we're survivors and we don't get set in our own way. And it kind of sounds to me that print was set in their way, and God forbid someone comes in and tells them to do something slightly different because,
they didn't like it.
And I think we've had to grow because of all the changes that we've endured, but we are probably more accepting as a whole and willing to move 750 miles away to take that next next opportunity, or step in front of an AMT in Nashville and act as if you've done it.
Yeah.
I think that says something about you, but also our industry. And
there are a lot of wonderful, resilient, fabulous people in this business. And, I love radio. I love radio people. I really love radio people.
Tell me the brainchild. How does NuVoodoo come to be?
NuVoodoo. Well, I got nice parting gifts from Tribune, but I'd brought a number of people with me who got 2 weeks right at Christmas. And so I remember I had lunch with Erin on the 27th of December. And I said, okay, let's do it. At that time I was living with someone else, so I had no rent to pay. I said, it's now or never. And I will tell you, there are some wonderful people in this business, and relationships mean everything. I will be eternally grateful to Jeff Kapugi, who was in St. Louis at the time, had left Tribune. I will be eternally grateful to Jim Richards, who has left radio but was in Seattle at the time. I will be eternally grateful to Greg Strassel, who gave us a chance.
So you decided to do this with Erin, Leigh, correct?
Leigh Jacobs. Marc was in the mix at the time.
And you
Mike O'Connor.
You self-fund this?
Yeah.
Again, your guts.
Insanity.
And
starting a business in 2010 was crazy.
What kind of infrastructure did you need to put together? Because obviously you've got, the recipe because you've done it for so many years, but you also have to put together a tremendous infrastructure.
Oh. Bob Lawrence used to be at Pinnacle.
Yeah,
He's now at, I will also be eternally grateful for him.
Bob's a great man. We do a lot of work with Bob.
Because he helped me when we started. Before we started doing things a different way, I had no way to even process music research. He was great. I mean,
now, did Bob shut down Pinnacle at that point?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what, no, he had Pinnacle at that point.
Since Bob is a giver, I know that he was very integral in Ken Benson as well.
Yeah,
and working with,
you know what? I mean, there's some great people in this business, and whether you're competitors or not, there are competitors for whom, I'll be eternally grateful to Bob Lawrence.
Was this a gulp moment starting this in 2010? Because you're right, we're fresh. We're really kind of still in the recession. 2010 is
it was insane. But what did I have to lose?
Well, could you at that point, and I like to ask this question, did you have enough of a nest egg to say, hey, or was this something that you had to do? Because I get the idea you probably, if you wanted to say, hey, I've had enough, you could have probably...
I probably didn't have enough. But at the time, as I said, I was living with somebody. I had no rent to pay.
Okay.
I didn't have... Yeah, I could have been okay.
Kids are out of school?
Oh, yeah, long out of school.
All right.
Lisa got married that year.
Okay. Which isn't cheap.
She got married before that all happened, thank God. Yeah, that was not cheap. She married a New York boy, and we might have gone a little over the top.
That's funny.
Yeah, but it was a nice wedding.
So you hang up your shingle.
Mm-hmm.
You put the infrastructure together. I want to hear how research has changed and the technology and what you guys do today. And then you just start calling on Bob and Greg and people Dave,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, Carolyn, we love you.
Yeah. No, Bob was running Pinnacle at the time.
Oh,
he was not a client.
Pinnacle. He wasn't.
He just gave me a back office.
Oh, my gosh. So
Yeah.
he was providing you infrastructure.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize
Until
that.
we got it together ourselves, yeah.
That's how you put that together. That's a brilliant move.
He was, and you know what? He needed some help with something, and I helped him, and he helped me, and he was wonderful. It was just sort of like the God saying, okay, bring him into her life. It was, luck. So much is luck.
Tell me, and by the way, luck is something that millionaires, people that have been very successful, most of the time will credit it to luck. People that aren't very successful, and I hate to say not very successful, but that, I guess that's the best way of putting it, will usually say it's something else. And it's your humbleness, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not being very articulate about it, but you've got a tremendous amount of humility. And
But it's not about me. It's about the wonderful people I've met. I am not NuVoodoo. My team is NuVoodoo. They make it work. There is a passion among the people who work with me that it's all about them. Yeah, there were some nights where I'd stay up at night going, how am I going to make payroll? No, my 401k suffered for...
Yeah, mine did too.
Well, actually, it was my IRA at the time, yeah.
Yeah. It's nerve.
But it's nerve-wracking.
Very nerve-wracking.
But, we have 17 people. We have full benefits.
That's fantastic.
We do have a 401k. So I'm pretty blessed. I feel, and I try to count blessings every day.
Mitzvahs.
Because, the older you get, the more you realize it can go away in a heartbeat. So, yeah.
How has research changed in the last 25 years?
Oh, my
30
goodness.
years?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, we do everything online now. I don't have people making annoying phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
We compensate respondents and not telephone agents. We're able to achieve perfect sampling because computers don't care. They disqualify you according to the parameters you set. We are able to discard people post facto. We have all sorts of traps for people, for bots. I've got all sorts of traps to get the riffraff out. So that it's a whole different thing. You used to sit and pray that the call out would get done with 100. Now we have 110, 120 for every 100 sample.
You'd say the data is significantly better today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I ran great call centers. I stand by the data now much more than I would, because you got people, you got to make quotas. You can monitor. You can't catch everything that way, but you can catch everything online.
Your career is fascinating, and running a business takes so much guts. Running a business that had 800 employees and oversaw 700
Don't
employees.
exaggerate.
Sorry, all right, 700 employees. Again, getting in that car and moving 750 miles. Of all the steps and those doors that you mentioned that some walk through and others that you don't, what are you the most proud of?
My kids. It's the only important thing I've ever done. The only important thing.
Thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely fantastic, and much success to you and everything that you guys are doing at NuVoodoo. And it's been a blast to sit across the table and talk to you about your career. I had no idea. It's really
well, it's been an interesting ride. It's never been dull, and just find joy. You got to find joy in life. Otherwise, why bother?